We bring you a chilling short story titled, One of My Passengers Isn't Human. When we left the dock, 5 people were in the boat. Now there are 6. I didn't notice it right away. I was focused on driving the boat through the murky darkness of the New Orleans swamp, and pointing out gators. "All right, everyone, take a look to your left," I called out, cutting the motor. "Between those 2 cypress trees, see that pair of eyes? That's a gator." They ignored me, giggling and whispering to each other. "They're not even looking," I groaned to Eric. "We could lose our jobs for this, keeping the boat out after dark." But no, that one girl just couldn't shut the fuck up about how she wanted to see a gator. That's teenagers for you. I sighed and looked out at the swamp. The lights on our boat barely penetrated the murky darkness. The cypress trees stood tall in the shadows, like an endless army of gray, thin, faceless people. Clumps of Spanish moss hung from their arms. Their feet disappeared into the black water. The swamp was silent, except for the croaks of the frogs. Then, splash. The boat lurched. I fell forward in my seat, as it rocked back and forth. Splash. "Eric, what was that?" But Eric had his phone out, playing some stupid mobile game. "What was what?" he said, his eyes not leaving the screen. "The splash, the boat rocking." He shrugged. "Probably just a gator, Ellen." "A gator?" I shivered. It was one thing to point to a gator's glinting eyes, 20 feet away, from the safety of the boat. It was another to hear a loud splash in the darkness, feel the boat rock, and wonder if the gator is slithering up the sides with those tiny little splash. I whipped around. Silence. The kids were oblivious. A geeky guy took sneaky sips from a flask, sidling up to an Asian girl in a purple hoodie. A tall guy put his arm around Blondie, the annoying girl who complained about gators earlier. 2 white girls giggled to each other, their ponytails bobbing. 6 teenagers in total. Not 5. "Eric? We only had 5 people board the boat." "Yeah. Why?" I looked at him, my heart starting to pound. "There are 6 people back there." He turned around, his lips moving as he counted them. 6. "You're right." Eric and I stared at each other. The boat drifted noiselessly through the water, the light glaring off the surface. Around us stood the cypress trees, stretching up to the sky. "Okay. Tour's over," Eric announced, turning towards the group. "We're turning back. Should be at the dock in 5. Geeky scrambled to hide his flask. Purple hoodie rolled her eyes. Ponytails 1 and 2 didn't even look up. Tall guy pulled Blondie close. I kicked the motor back on. It thrummed under our feet. I grabbed the steering wheel and jerked it left. The boat slowly turned towards the trees. Why is a K-turn in a boat so hard? "Let me drive. I can go faster." Eric stood over me. His usual laid-back attitude was gone. From the corner of my eye, I could see his arms shake, his eyes dart across the swamp. "But I'm supposed to do it, to learn. Let me drive," he yelled. I got up. He grabbed the wheel, jerked the boat back. It nearly hit one of the cypress trees. Then we were zooming back down the channel, the murky water roiling and churning beneath us. "We probably just miscounted when they boarded, right?" I said. "I mean, I'm not totally sure." "I am. Only 5 people boarded, Ellen." "So what does that mean?" "Someone got on the boat, after we left the dock." "What?" I forced a laugh, even though I felt nauseous inside. "You're saying someone climbed out of the water and onto the boat?" He didn't reply. I looked back at the teenagers again. None of them looked familiar, or out of place. Geeky, purple hoodie, tall guy, Blondie, the ponytails. I'd been concentrating so much on driving, I hadn't even given the passengers a second glance. Then I shook my head. No way. This is crazy. We must have just miscounted when we left. The boat cut through the water. The gray silhouettes of the cypress trees dissolved back into shadows. The churning wake glinted like diamonds in the light. The boat jolted to a stop. A felled cypress tree lay across the water, half submerged, blocking the path back to the dock. Who the fuck put this here? Put it there? Maybe it just fell, I offered, barely convincing myself. Eric shook his head. Okay, change of plans. You get back there and try to figure out who's the odd man out. You don't really think. He turned to me, his brown eyes blazing with anger. Do it now. Okay. I climbed out of the passenger seat, made my way to the back of the boat. The kids looked at me with wide eyes. Hey guys, I said. I'm Ellen, your tour guide. We just ran into a little hiccup, but then are we going to die out here? Ponytail 1 asked. Oh my god, Brittany, don't ask that, Ponytail 2 said. We're going to be okay though, right? Blondie asked, her voice quavering. Yeah, we're just, I faltered. I have to go to the bathroom, Geeky complained. Like real bad. If we don't get back soon, can I go in the water? Purple Hoodie shot a disgusted look at him. Let's just... I stopped. I had an idea. You guys all know each other, right? Did you meet anyone for the first time tonight on the boat? Tall guy pointed straight at me. You. I sighed. I meant other than Eric and me, murmured Oz. I stepped closer. Listen, guys. Only 5 of you boarded the boat. But there are 6 of you sitting here. They stared at me, silent, as the truth dawned on them. 1 of you boarded the boat after it left the dock. So I'm asking you again, did you meet anyone for the first time tonight? Ponytail 1 raised her hand. Ponytail 2 elbowed her and whispered. This isn't school, Brittany. What were you going to say? I asked her. Just that our school's, like, really big. I only knew Isabella before tonight, she said, pointing at Ponytail 2. Same. I only knew Brittany, Ponytail 2 said, pointing back at her. I met him once before, Tall Guy said, motioning to Geeky. He tried out for the basketball team. Didn't make it, though. Geeky hid his head in shame. I didn't know anyone, Blondie said. Met them all for the first time tonight. Liar, Purple Hoodie muttered. What? I said, liar. She pulled her hood more tightly over her hair, shrouding her eyes in shadow. Everyone knows you hooked up with him. She pointed at Geeky. Over summer vacation. You just don't want to tell anyone because it's so embarrassing. What? That's not true. And hey, what about you? Blondie said, staring at Purple Hoodie. I've never seen you before. Oh, come on. Purple Hoodie rolled her eyes. I've never seen her either, Tall Guy said. I looked at the others. The ponytails shook their heads in unison. Geeky stared at her, as if looking for a redemptive sparkle in her eyes. Then he too shook his head. So none of you know her? Silence. All eyes on her. Purple Hoodie's eyes glinted in the shadows of her hood. But if I didn't know anyone, how would I know about you two? She pointed furiously at Blondie and Geeky. Wait, Geeky said. Do you not know our names? Is that why you keep pointing at us? Of course I do. It's, she faltered. Caroline and John, right? BZZZT. Wrong answer. Geeky stood up, pointing an accusing finger at her. That proves it. Wait. Tall Guy said, squinting at Purple Hoodie. I think I remember you. You were the one-eyed cow in the 7th grade nativity scene, weren't you? Oh my god, she muttered, her face flushing. Oh yeah? I remember that, Blondie said. Moo. Muh. I turned to Blondie, and my blood ran cold. Her hair. It was damp. Suddenly it all made sense. She didn't know anyone. She was the one who insisted on seeing an alligator. She was the one who wouldn't shut up until we turned the boat around. She was the one who made us drive further into the swamp. If it weren't for her, we'd be back at the dock right now. Did you know the blonde girl before tonight? I asked Tall Guy. He looked at me, wide-eyed. Shook his head. Do any of you know her? One by one, they each shook their heads. Except for Geeky. He nodded enthusiastically. I paced forward. The click of my footsteps echoed against the bottom of the boat. I crouched to her level, looked up into her face. Blondie's eyes glittered in the dim light, matching the swamp water below. On her lips was a small smirk, utterly unafraid of our accusations. And her face glistened with a thin film of damp. I jumped back. "She's it! Eric, she's it!" Eric stood up, rushed to my side. He stared intently at her, his expression grim. "Oh, come on!" Blondie scoffed. "It's not me, I swear!" "Then how come you're all wet?" Tall guy asked. I sweat a lot, okay. It's really humid out here," she said, face flushing. The rest of the teenagers were silent, watching her closely. "Seriously, come on, guys. I see you around at school all the time, then how come none of us remember you?" Ponytail 2 interjected. Blondie narrowed her eyes at them. "Maybe because I'm cooler than you." "You're a monster!" Ponytail 1 shrieked. "Oh, shut up!" Ponytail 2 stood up. A fiery anger danced in her eyes. "Stop trying to convince us. We all know it's you." She stepped forward. Click, click, click. Blondie backed away, until she was cornered at the edge of the boat. "Let me go," Blondie said. Ponytail 2 shook her head. Blondie tried to dart around her. But Ponytail 2 was too quick. She leapt forward, grabbed her arms, and pushed. Blondie toppled over the side of the boat. Splash. "It's not me!" Blondie screamed as she resurfaced. Black rivers of mascara ran down her cheeks. Her hair stuck fast to her head. She bobbed up and down as she clung to the side of the boat. "It is you!" Ponytail 1 yelled. "Fuck, something just grabbed my foot!" She tried to hoist herself back up onto the boat but slipped back down. Splash. Okay, fine, I'll admit it. Jeremy and I hooked up on my little brother's bed while the rest of my family was on vacation in Bermuda. Ask him if you don't believe me. That clears my name, doesn't it? Please, just get me out of here. It's true, Geeky said hurriedly. She's telling the truth, guys. With a sigh, Eric leaned over the side of the boat and pulled her back up. She sat on the bench, drenched and shivering, her tears mixing with the swamp water. My eyes fell on her arms. I gasped. Exactly where Ponytail 2's hands had grabbed her were 2 sets of long, bloody claw marks. Blondie looked at me, then at her arms. Hey, what the fuck did you do to me? She screamed at Ponytail 2. What the fuck is this? Eric and I whipped around. The ponytails stood close to each other, separated from the rest of the group. Faces hidden in the shadows. My heart began to pound. They said they knew each other, but no one else knew them. It's you, I choked out. Both of you. There was still doubt in my mind. Doubt that they were the ones who joined us. After all, I'd only counted 1 extra person, not 2. That doubt evaporated as soon as they turned to face me. Glittering black eyes. Crooked smiles. Hands ending in sharp black claws. Surprised it took you that long. Ponytail 1 said, taking a step towards me. The words came out with a lisp, from the scaly lips, the pointed teeth. But how could it be both of you? Eric asked, his ragged breaths in my ear. There was only 1 extra person. We already threw one of the teenagers overboard. Ponytail 2 said. Yeah. It was easy. A loner type. She snickered. When she fell in the water, you all barely looked up. The splash. The rocking boat. I suddenly felt dizzy. Faint. Numb. Eric dove into the driver's seat. I'm going to try to get to the dock, the long way around. Keep them safe. How? I yelled. The 2 ponytails were already stepping towards the other 4 teenagers, hungry smiles on their faces. Just do it. The motor roared to life. The boat sped through the dark, sending white foam flying. The cypress trees rattled in the wind, the moss swung from the branches. Splash, splash. Behind the boat, the water roiled and churned. There are more of them. Behind us. I yelled. Scaly heads punctured the surface. Wet hair fanned out in the inky water, shading their bodies. Black, empty eyes glinted in the light. They started towards the boat. I stood between the ponytails and the other teenagers, trying to keep my eyes off the water. Blondie cowered behind me. Geeky muttered something incoherently to himself. The two girls just smiled. Splash! The boat rocked back and forth, sloshing water everywhere. I glanced down. Scaly hands were grabbing at the sides. Go faster. I screamed to Eric. I can't. I looked down at the floor. Anchors, ropes, hooks, what could I use against them? I didn't have time to find out. Something yanked me back. Hard. The two girls pinned me to the ground. The rest of the teenagers screamed. We're going to throw you in first, Ponytail 2 said, her voice lisping and raspy. Her breath reeked of rotten fish, musty swamp. Blondie next, Ponytail 1 said. She's such a bitch. They pushed me against the edge of the boat. The cold metal dug into my back. My hair hung into the water. I could feel the tugging, the pulling, as claws raked through my hair. Snarling, gurgling, ready to devour me as soon as my body hit the water. I shut my eyes tight, bracing myself. Thump. The hands released. Blondie stood over me. She had Ponytail 1 by the neck, holding her halfway over the boat. That's for calling me a bitch, you slimy monster, she growled. Tall Guy ran over and grabbed her feet. In one coordinated motion, they threw her overboard. Splash. Geeky and Purple Hoodie wrestled with Ponytail 2 on the floor of the boat. She writhed and slashed at them, but Purple Hoodie didn't back down. Smack. Smack. She landed several punches, before Ponytail 2 wriggled out of her grasp. Crack. Purple Hoodie's body made a sickening crack on the floor of the boat. Ponytail 2 dashed over to the front of the boat. She turned to Eric. The dock light was already in sight, a twinkling star in the blackness. No! I screamed, stumbling up. I wasn't fast enough. She grabbed Eric and yanked him from the steering wheel. The boat swerved. She toppled him overboard. Splash. Eric. No! I screamed. The boat was veering towards a dense thicket of cypress trees. Before I could react, Tall Guy ran into the seat, grabbed the steering wheel, and righted our course. Purple Hoodie, with renewed vigor, tackled Ponytail 2. Splash. Purple Hoodie leaned over the boat, panting, a triumphant smile on her face. Eric? Eric? I called. I leaned over the side of the boat, staring at the rippling patch of water where Eric fell in. His head broke through the surface, spraying dark, swampy water everywhere. I'm okay. He began swimming towards the boat, closing the several-foot gap between us. He plunged under the surface. Eric! Eric? I screamed. The water was still. Turn around! I yelled at Tall Guy. We have to save him! Tall Guy shook his head, pointing towards the water. Where Eric had been, several of the creatures were diving under the surface. Their faces came up bloody and grinning. Faster! Blondie screamed. I looked around. The horde of creatures was still advancing through the murky water, now joined by two very angry comrades. Beyond the halo of light, the shadows shifted between the cypress trees. Squelch, splash. The water frothed and bubbled as more heads broke the surface. Tall Guy's hands were rigid on the steering wheel. Sweat glistened on his skin. I can't go any faster, he said. I can't. The lights of the dock were brightly in view, piercing the darkness of the swamp. We were close. The stench of funnel cake and cotton candy filled my nostrils. The distant laughter and cheers of people filled my ears. Keep going! The motor groaned under us. The dock was just several feet away. Behind me, hisses and splashes, rasping groans, thunk. We collided with the dock. Everyone out! I yelled. I leapt onto the wood. It creaked beneath me. I wrapped the rope around one of the posts. Tall Guy and Blondie climbed out, followed by Geeky and Purple Hoodie. Splash, splash. Beyond the light, The shadowed heads plopped back into the water. And then the water was glassy and still. The 4 teenagers did okay. Blondie is in college now, a track and field star. Tall guy is a basketball player at the same place. They've been dating for a while. Geeky and Purple Hoodie remain good friends, despite living in different cities. I'm still here, in New Orleans, giving boat tours every evening. I just never stay out after dark. As for the Eric and the girl who was thrown overboard, they were never found. The police investigated and took statements from all of us, but ultimately, their deaths were ruled accidental drownings. Despite no bodies ever washing to shore. Despite Eric being a champion swimmer in college. Their files sit somewhere in the police office, collecting dust, never to be opened again. I should step forward and tell them the truth. But I'm not sure they'd believe me. Some days, I'm not sure I believe myself. I pace the paths near the water, wondering if the whole thing was some sort of hallucination. Some sort of mass hysteria. But then I look up at the swamp, and I know it was real. Because, just for a second, I see heads poking out of the murky water, watching me with glittering black eyes.